On today's session, we're going to explore the role of employee engagement. The people-centric topic is becoming an increasing priority for organizations. With data, analytics, and a steady pulse in your teams, companies can identify areas where engagement is thriving and lacking. Stick around to discover actionable steps you can take today to drive engagement and create a work environment where individuals feel valued. Hello, and welcome back to RPI Tech Connect. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Airy, and today we're joined by the one and only Melissa Olson. Melissa is the Director of Infor Solutions here at RPI, and she's been with the company since the beginning. Her experience spans industries and solutions, but she got her start in the HR space, which makes her a perfect speaker for today's topic, employee engagement. Before we dive in though, Melissa, did you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Sure. As you said, I've had a pretty deep HR background. I started years and years ago programming HRES software. I was with a public sector organization that required kind of a lot of modifications in order for it to work with some different funding sources we had. So I started there supporting payroll, benefits, employee self-service, and then moved into a marketing company, private sector. Huge churn. We did marketing and merchandising for a lot of North American brands that you may recognize: Walmart, Microsoft, Budweiser, and sometimes these engagements were as short as 4 hours. So I would have to make sure get people onboarded into our system and ready for their engagement and offboarded at the end of their shift. So that was a very high volume. And then moving into RPI, where I've been for the last 11 years, seen a lot of different organizations and helped navigate their processes and their strategy through, just visibility into their people and their programs. So what works, what doesn't. We're really getting into an age of analytics now and helping make better decisions through data. So this is an exciting time to be in HR, exciting time to, tackle some of these engagement issues that we'll be talking about today, because we didn't have the tools that we have today in the past, but we had a lot of similar problems.
Yeah, awesome. So glad you shared that with us, and you're definitely right. The work world is not what it once was, and looking back at 2023, we saw a lot of change, a lot of shifting in priorities, and I think some of that, kind of spurned by COVID, which feels like a lifetime ago.
Right.
But as we all know, it really kind of brought to life some important issues that maybe weren't as prominent as they are today. But beyond that, though, I'm curious to hear like what you think. Why has there been this shift in employee engagement as a priority? Do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's two things, right? You mentioned the COVID pandemic. That really brought people's priorities in light. People were losing family members, friends. They were isolated. There was a lot of depression. There was a lot of loneliness. There was, I'm reading this book right now, and yeah, it's a Stephen King book. It's Salem's Lot. I like because
Nice.
it's our book club for spooky season, but we kind of extended it. And there's like this line in there about uh, the word alone is the scariest, almost the scariest word in the English language, even more scary than murder. Not even a word, but just the thought of being alone is scarier than murder. And we lived in a society where a lot of us were alone for a very long time and didn't get to see people. So when we think about work, we're not thinking about, okay, I'm going to live to work anymore. It's really about what are the priorities that we've had. What are the things we don't want to have, because we were alone with our thoughts for a very long time at that point. And then the other side of it is just newer generations coming into the workforce. So while the earlier generations, the boomers, the Xers, even to some extent the older millennials, we just followed the same path. You get a job, you look for some security, you look to pay your bills, and you stay there. And newer generations are affected. They've grown up on technology, and they're affected by this constant like barrage of content and information, and it's 3 minutes, and it's TikTok and news feed and everything, notifications on your phone, and they're not wanting to stay somewhere looking for job security and just a paycheck. They want some meaning. They want to understand how they fit in the bigger picture. So I think a combination of both of those has brought us to a place where people aren't going to just settle for a paycheck anymore um, if they have the skill set, the background that kind of allows them to be a little bit more mobile.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I think I saw something recently that said that for the first time, I think maybe ever, there are five different generations in the workplace. Is that
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, that was
And
actually in one of my older podcasts.
yeah.
Yeah, because we'll be getting Generation Alpha coming into, not corporate world quite yet, but they are starting to get their first jobs, and they'll be coming in pretty soon. So
And you can only imagine from like an HR perspective how challenging that might be to juggle these different like expectations of what employees want from work, right?
exactly. Exactly, and
Okay.
it's not one size fits all. That's the hard thing is, I think a lot of employers and organizations look at, this buzzword of engagement, and they're like, oh, let's just have some recognition programs, or let's give everybody a membership to a gym and pay for some wellness programs, and that will help with burnout. And we're seeing a lot of burnout with our healthcare workers, frontline workers. um, you know, Compensation has a lot to do with it, but just having to be there all the time, when the population was just kind of surging within these hospitals and patient care clinics. So this uh, one size fits all for employee engagement and retention is not going to work. Not even industry specific, because people have very different drivers for why they're going to work, why they're working with an organization, and what they want, at the end of the day.
So it sounds like then, so, as companies, regardless of industry, as they're, shifting their priority into employee engagement, it sounds like a good place to start is to kind of first understand what it is you're doing and to kind of have like a pulse on your different like teams. Would
Mm-hmm.
you agree that like that's a good place
It's
to
the
kind of begin
micro
that
level.
journey?
Yeah, 100%. It's micro level. It's, we think about it as this overarching initiative for organizations or for HR departments. And it's the HR departments don't have that pulse that you're talking about. They don't talk. They only engage with employees when something's wrong, and it's something on the employee relations side, something wrong with them,
Reactive.
or they're
Oh.
saying something's wrong with someone else, or they're engaged because they're asking about any kind of healthcare benefits, something they want a question answered on that side. They don't just you know sit in HR's office, kind of like is it Ted Lasso? No, it's not Ted Lasso. There's like one of the shows where the person just goes into the HR person, just like the psychologist, and sits there, and they're like, no, no. Oh, it's
It's not venting, a venting session. It's not what
yeah, yeah,
employee
it's
engagement is. If you're
uh
having, if
we might
that is
cut
what
this,
your
but yeah,
engagement is, you you
sorry.
probably have a problem, right? Like
Well,
it's just
right,
like
right. It's so HR can't create these programs in a silo. Um, it's managers, and I mean, even employees can reach out to their teammates, and we can make a difference to each other. If there's a disengaged employee, there's a disengaged teammate. It's like, why are they not either happy or not, you know, rah rah around the team and rah rah around the organization. Not that everybody has to be, but you want to have some sort of connection to the people and the place that you're working. And we spend so much time working, whether it's in an actual office or not. We want to have something with some kind of meaning and value. So it really is understanding your teams, your colleagues, um, And I think, we'll continue to talk about it, but I think, anybody can be that catalyst for change around that engagement and help bring others up or help people determine that maybe that's not the place for them and they would be happier, whether it's another, what we would hope, what we're going to strive for is another position in the organization where you've been able to have opportunities develop and move around. That's, where true employee engagement and retention happens, not around gym memberships and headspace memberships and
So with that then, what would you say? Like, what are some things that folks can do today to help, drive engagement? I mean, beyond like getting a read on where they're at, what they're doing right, and like where they'd have to improve. I feel like there's other types of tools and things that like organizations can deploy to help, I guess, create that environment that they're hoping to, foster.
Right. It's a multi-pronged approach. I think you can use, we talked about at the beginning, the technology and the tools we have today give us visibility and insights into our people like we've never had before. So leveraging analytics, but not just, hey, let's plug in, an analytics tool. It's understanding what are the questions you're trying to answer. What is the direction that the organization is going? And no matter what the output product of an organization is, the people are the ones that output that product. So you cannot be successful, whether it is healthcare or retail or public sector or whatever industry you're in. Your people are truly your product, and we want to really have that understanding of what is your mission, where are you trying to go, and where do you need your, I'm going to continue to say people because I feel like workforce is such a kind of a cold
Dry.
old
Yeah.
word. It doesn't really give us all the facets of the people that are in our organization. It sees them as just this one generic,
Catch-all
blob.
term, right?
Exactly. So, you start with understanding, okay, where does our organization want to go? If we're trying to grow and scale, what do we need to do that? If we're trying to, cut costs, if we're trying to uh, garner the best talent because we need a competitive advantage. First you want to understand what your goal of your organization is, and then start applying those analytics, not to get technical, but the data models to basically say, this is the information I need, these are the time periods I need, and this is, these are the data points that I can start seeing the patterns. I want to see if there's a high turnover in one area, what is it? Is it an environmental factor? Is it a people factor? Not, it doesn't have to just be a manager. It could be a disengaged coworker that's just super negative and toxic to the team. It could be the job description is not,
Reflective. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, reflective of what the duties actually are. So here you're in this position that you think you're qualified for, and you're asked to do these things that are so far outside of your realm of experience, and then you don't have the support and development to be able to get to where you need to be. So you leave. So it's just understanding turnover. And then it's also understanding where are the successful pockets, who is doing really well, who has been with the organization for many years, but not in the same role because they're going to die and retire there, and you have to wait to move up to that role until they die or retire. But it's who has been really successful about uh, taking their experience and offering value across the organization, and having the opportunities and development that is backed by the organization to kind of, like I said, foster it.
So there's two things that you said there that I think are really really important, and the first one is the distinction you made between simply looking at data. Um, you know, people aren't data; they're not data points, they're not analytics. You use that data support and to answer the questions that you're trying to solve for, which is what you said. Super important. The data supports that. And the second thing is this concept of like you know creating a path for people who work within your company, right? It's not they don't want to stay in stagnant positions. They want. I think that's a big factor that is of what's helping engage teams is like what can these employees expect from
Mm-hmm.
their careers working in this establishment? Would you? I
Right.
mean, is that
Remember, nobody has any they can't pay attention for that long in their
yeah?
personal life. They can't go 20 minutes without checking a notification on their phone, and you expect them to be in that same role doing the same thing for year on year without any dynamic change, without any autonomy to say this job is no longer the same. Our organization has changed. What I do needs to change with it, and give me. I know this so well. Give me the reins to be able to create something new and progress the organization where it needs to go. We hire people that are qualified, that we trust, that we like. We also should be able to try if they are that good at their job. And it's not just this is, I am talking about more of those skill positions where people do see change and do have, the opportunity to grow within their same position. But then there are also people who are completely fine with doing the same thing every day because they have a young
Stability,
child at
right?
home and
Yeah.
they want to leave early to be able to go to pick their kid up from school or to go to recitals. And having a lot more responsibilities means potentially being at work longer and later. And if they're at home, there's no delineation between work time and home time. So it's okay if somebody wants to do what they want to do for the next 10 years. You just need to understand who your team is. Do they want that progression? Do they want to innovate? Do they want to be able to contribute to the organization in a different way, or do they just want a paycheck and be able to have other priorities where work is not constantly pulling at them, whether it's emails or phone or just kind of not being able to sleep because you're thinking about a problem that you need to solve. So
It gets back to what we were saying originally, where it's like the very first step is to understand what your employees want. And
mhm.
I agree with you that like workplace dynamics are changing, and no employee wants the same things. And those my a former colleague of mine used to call them steady eddies, were the people who came to work, did what they were expected to do, and left, and like they left it there. And having that balance was more important to them than like moving up the corporate ladder or career advancements. But the same isn't true. So like you really need to understand what it is that like your teams want, and you have to listen, right? I
Mhm.
feel like listening is at the root of all of that. But with that though, I think there's tools that companies can use to kind of help sift through and identify the candidates who are looking to like move up the corporate ladder. I think is it Infor Talent Science is one of those. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's a few of them. So talent science is really about what are your behavioral characteristics and what what are you more successful at? So it's not
Mm.
looking at your skill set or your experience or your degree. It's saying because of the way you've answered an assessment, you're within this organization, because talent science also looks at the assessment responses from who the organization deems to be a great culture fit, a successful group of people. And these are the more type of these people are what we want, and we're hoping that means it's people who are innovative, people who are creative, people who are problem solvers, people who are able to work autonomously, people who are a joy to be around, who people there are a lot of factors in different organizations as to what makes them a culture fit. And we're not talking you know um, everybody likes to throw the word culture around, and it's not.
It's a buzzword.
There's no one
It's been
culture.
a buzzword.
It is. There's so many teams and organizations. There's not going to be one culture. Every manager is
Sure.
going to drive the culture that's in their area. But who you see move around your organization successfully is what talent science will have some IO psychologists come in and look at those profiles and kind of look at your internal population and say, okay, you know what? These people are sitting over here in this department doing X, but the way their mind works, the way their innate characteristics are, they would be so much more successful in Y. How can we? Because not only will they be more successful, but they'll probably be super happy because now they're firing on all cylinders. They're doing the things that they enjoy and
They're
they're doing the things
engaged.
they're good at. And how do we get them from X to Y? What is that path? It's not going to be let's just transfer positions, they're not going to possibly have those skill sets. So creating those development paths using leveraging, talent management software to gather more data. We talked about it with analytics. The more information you have, and it's like, scary big brother, everybody knows what I'm doing, everybody wants to know everything about me. Well, they already do. Guess what? So you need to start capturing a lot of that in your HRIS system so you can start seeing, John over here has some qualifications or skill sets that have nothing to do with his job. But if you didn't capture them, you don't realize that he might be a great fit
Somewhere
for
else.
another role, maybe a key position in your succession planning, maybe leveraging that talent science or some other assessment type software where, you can really leverage the strengths they bring. It's so much more expensive to lose somebody and have to rehire. It's not just the cost per hire on the talent acquisition side and everything you have to do, the time spent by managers and your talent acquisition recruiters and directors, but it's also that institutional knowledge that you lost. You lost somebody who knew the politics of the area. They knew the way the organization worked. They knew what they can push through and what they can't, how to get things done. To get somebody ramped up like that will take probably
Time.
a good year and a half to 2 years. So you're not, to be able to keep somebody is so much cheaper. I mean, we're talking about development, but even if it's comp, even if it's throwing an extra, you know, X amount to them, you feel like you can't afford it. But I'll tell you, you really can't afford it if you lose them and you have to bring
Lose them.
new
Yeah.
into that organization. Yeah.
Start that process over again.
Hmm.
There was something you mentioned though. I want to take a step back and revisit this idea that when you understand an employee's strengths, what they're good at, and like when they're put in a position where they're fully engaged and they're firing on all cylinders, as you mentioned, they become happy. And I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of data points out there that say that when employees are engaged and they're happy and they're involved the way you're explaining, a lot of times the company is going to benefit more from that because the customers on the other end who are like, you know, inadvertently benefiting from employees who are happy, engaged, and paying attention, it's
Yeah.
going to be better service, right?
Right.
That means a better result for like their, customers or patients or what have you. Like they're getting, it's a win-win for everybody involved,
Hmm.
right? And
Right.
you're saving on top of that too, like you mentioned. It's way more expensive to lose, rehire, replace, and they're coming in at a higher rate because
Hmm.
with the way that the job market's been,
Competitive job market. Yeah.
it's just it's yeah. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no. I was just gonna agree with you because it's not only what makes them happy, but I think a lot of people feel like they have to have, like we talked about a little earlier, just that they're part of
Mm,
the success of the organization. They whatever they are doing has a direct reflection on the wellness or not wellness of an organization. And that's where your disengaged employees, they're not only unproductive and not doing what they should be, but now their teammates are having to carry their weight. So now their
mm,
teammates are starting to gather resentment because
yeah,
you're not firing somebody who's not doing their work. They're just sitting around and you have to do their work or and work longer and not get paid as much. And it's just kind of a domino effect. It doesn't just affect that one person who's not happy. It affects and then they'll be talking negatively about the organization, about teams, about whatever it is, and that slowly starts to filter through everywhere else, and people are questioning. I like this company, but I didn't realize there was
Yeah.
this or that. Maybe I don't like this company. And I mean, that's what you also want to avoid. You want the positive, the productivity and the happiness and engagement, but you also don't want that toxicity
Sure.
permeating and to be
Good
real, a
word
lot
choice.
of
Yeah.
times, yeah, a lot of times, you have nothing to do about it because sometimes this comes from above, right? There could be no choice because management wants to micromanage, management wants to do this. And, I was talking to somebody about, um, I don't even remember what company they were working with. And, oh, it was healthcare. And, oh no, it's oil and gas, but the person was in
Sure.
HR. And she's like, the CEO just wants everything done the way he wants to do it. He wants to tell you how to do it. And he doesn't want people to say, no, there's a better way, or let me figure it out myself. He just wants little lackeys to do what he wants to do across the whole organization. So, when you get this, it's really hard to bring up, some of these initiatives or try and understand what your workforce is like because, leadership might not be kind of attuned to. They want workers and they're fine with the churn and burn because they don't understand the other costs that it causes.
That's a oppressive leadership is definitely a detriment to employee engagement. But I think that's a topic that we could dive into and could save for another day
Yeah,
because
right.
there's a lot there. But I agree with you. Um, so we're getting close to the end here, and but before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you this closing thought, and it's if you could offer our audience one piece of advice around employee engagement, what would it be?
Oh boy, one piece of
Just
advice.
one thing, yeah.
I mean, because there's
It
the
could
listening
be.
side, but I mean, we're all employees too. So it's really, take care of yourself, make sure you're okay. Like they say, I fly a lot. Like they say in the airlines, put your oxygen mask on first before you take care of your kids. And, you hear that in your personal life. You can't lose yourself when you're raising small children and whatever. You have to be there and present. But, in order to do any of these initiatives in order to help support a great organization and engagement, you have to kind of take a look and take stock of where you are, and you're probably not that far off from many of your coworkers and your employees. So however you're feeling, start there. Make sure
Hmm.
you're okay because everybody will see that positivity and see that engagement from you. And then also, you can start understanding, okay, what are the questions I ask myself to make sure I'm okay? These are the questions I need to, and open real dialogue with your teammates and your departments. It's not, surveys. There's information for surveys, and there's technology. There's
They have a
great
small
place
role
for
to play,
technology.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a great place for technology. And again, it's seeing patterns, but you don't want to interact with your people with not a person. And you, as in HR, our whole job is to be of service to our employees, to the organization. And when we're kind of caught up with being data stewards, it's harder to spend the time to really connect. Oh, I don't have time to answer these calls or connect with this person. I'll schedule some time with you next week. I need to get this report out, or I need to get this initiative pushed out, or whatever. And you're missing out on opportunities to connect with your employees who may want to sit down on that couch and say, this is where I am, this is how I'm feeling, and it might not be that different from other people in their area. So to have that introspection and then to have those um, real, genuine connections and conversations to understand, okay, this is where we are today. How can we move past it? Because it's not as easy as, a lot of things made it sound in this podcast. There's a lot of politics, and there's a lot of ingrained thinking of the way things are, and if things aren't broken operationally, we don't want to change it. But you know, everything as we've seen in the last 3 years, everything's changing, and it's going to continue to change at this like warp speeds. So to be on top of it, it's having the visibility, being able to be agile, and having just that honesty and transparency.
Awesome. Yeah, like you said, that the script is being flipped. So things as they were are not going to be the same, and I think you're raising some great points here on how having a pulse and listening to yourself and listening to those around you is going to be a great starting place for organizations. But yeah, but for those tuning in, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. If you're struggling with an employee engagement or another aspect of HR, we encourage you to reach out. You can contact us at podcast@rpic.com. Again, that's podcast@rpic.com. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.